In this video, we're going to learn regular expressions or regex. So what do we need regex for? They are used usually to look for a certain pattern in a string. Basically, they can be used to validate a certain user input. So let's say we would like the user input to include at least one capital letter. Then we would need to use a regex for that. Also, if you would like to make sure that the user input includes at least one digit, we would need to use a regex. Alright, so let's start with one first example. First of all, we're going to need a string. So let's define a string. So we're going to call it str, and let's give this a value. Let's go for Atlanta, for instance. Okay, and then we're going to need a pattern. So the pattern is an object. Okay, so it's not a string, it's an object. So let's call it pattern, and let's go, for example, for letter A. So the pattern needs to be between two forward slashes. Okay, and we can add a modifier at the end of the pattern. Okay, so the modifier will modify the way we're going to search for the pattern inside the string. So for example, I is used to do a case insensitive search. Okay, so if we're looking for A, then it will take into account any A we find there, whether it's a capital letter or a small letter. Okay, so now let's see how to search for the pattern inside the string. So we're gonna send an alert message with the results. Okay, so one way of doing that is by using a string method. So we're gonna start with the string. Okay, and we're going to use a method called search, and then we're going to use the pattern in the parameter of the search. So basically we're searching the pattern inside the string. So let's see what the result is going to be. So we get 0. Basically the search method returns the position of the first instance of the pattern that we could find in the string. And in our case, we found letter A in position 0. That's why it's returning 0. And it's a case insensitive search. So basically, it's taking into account the capital letter as well. Okay, so if we change the search to a global search using the G letter, then this time the result is going to be 3. Because A, the first A doesn't count because it is capital letter and we're looking for small letters. So the first instance in our case now has got a position 3. Okay? Alright, so let's keep the modifier G. Also, when we use the G as a modifier, when we are doing a match later on, there is a small difference in the results, and we'll see it in a bit. Okay? So now there is another function, is the match. So it's also a method of string, and the parameter is the pattern. So let's see what the result is. So first, let's try the I modifier and see what we get. Okay, so it's returning the first instance of the search. So it's returning the actual letter that we could find according to the pattern. Okay, now if we change the modifier to G, which is global search, this time it's going to return all the instances, okay, of the search, which is at this time case sensitive. So it's this one and that one. So you've got a list of characters there. Okay. Okay. Now there is another way of testing a pattern in a string. It's by using the test method, which is a method of the pattern itself and not of the string. So basically we need to change the whole syntax. We're going to start with the pattern itself, as we're using a method of the pattern, and the function or the method is test, and then the parameter is going to be the string. Okay, so let's see what the result is going to be, and this function is returning a boolean. So basically it will just test the pattern in the string and see whether it exists or not, and it will return true or false. Okay, all right, so now we're gonna create a few paragraphs. Okay, and we're gonna create some code in here and just play with the patterns and strings, and just make sure that we've got the results on the page to make it easy to understand. So I'm just gonna get rid of everything here. Okay, we're gonna keep the string and pattern only. Okay, so let's create a paragraph. So first paragraph is going to be the string. Okay, and then another paragraph for the pattern, another one for the results using search, another one for results using match, and another one for the results using the test method. So the first one is going to be string. Okay, and we're gonna put the string in a span. All right, when we need to give the span an ID. So let's give it an ID of string. Okay, and the next one is going to be the pattern, and also we put the pattern in a span as well, and we give it an ID as well, pattern. All right, the next one is going to be for the search results. And also we'll put it in a span with an ID of search. It's probably easier to just duplicate those. So the other one is search match, ID is match, and the final one is test, ID is test. Okay, and now we're gonna change the content of the string to str. Okay, so document get elements by ID string, and we want to change the inner HTML to str. Okay, and the same thing for the pattern. Okay, and the same thing for the search, match, and test. So basically for the search, we're gonna use the search method. So it's gonna be the string, and we're using the search method, and the parameter is the pattern. Okay, and for the match, it's going to be similar, but the method is match, and finally the result using the test is by starting with the pattern and using the test method, which is a method of the pattern itself. Okay, so let's see what we get here. Alright, so now we can see the string, we can see the pattern, and we can see the results using each of the methods. Okay, so let's now change the pattern. Before we do that, there is another way of defining the pattern using a constructor. It's the regex constructor. So the syntax is var, okay, the name of the pattern, and we use new followed by the regex function or constructor, and we need two parameters there. So the first parameter is going to be whatever we put between the two forward slashes there, and it's going to be a string. Okay, so a, and the second parameter is the modifier, and we need to use strings, okay, for both parameters. So basically if we comment that one, actually the result is going to be exactly the same. Okay, but for now we're just gonna use the simple way that we have seen at the beginning. Okay, so now let's change the pattern and see what results we're going to be getting. So now, rather than having a pattern of letter A, so we can change this pattern. So let's say we want to check whether the string has got any letter between A and Z, any letter. So the syntax is going to be A minus sign Z between brackets. Okay, so if we check that, So basically, the result shows that the first instance is at position 1, which is T, and it's because we're looking at only small letters, okay? And the results match all the letters after the capital letter A. They are matches, okay? And we can see them there in the list. And the test result is true, okay? Okay, let's try another pattern. Okay, if we try ATN, okay, so now we're checking whether the string includes these letters, okay? And now if we use the caret symbol, so that means that we're looking for all the characters that are not in here, okay? So let's see what the result is going to be. Okay, so we can see that we're looking, so the first instance is 0 because that character is not there, and we're looking for anything outside these letters, okay, all these characters. So the matches are capital A and L, okay? Okay, now let's try something else. Just gonna comment that. Let's try to look for digits between 4 and 7, okay? So let's change this a little bit and put some digits there. So we're looking for all the digits between 4 and 7, which means 4, 5, 6, and 7. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so the result, the first instance is at position 7, and we can see the results there, you know, the list of all the instances, and the test is returning true. All right. Okay, so let's try something else. Let's try now to see if there is any digits inside our string. So the syntax for that, so we don't need brackets, we only need a backslash with letter D. So let's see what we get in the results. Okay, so it's finding digits there. Okay, so the test is true, and we can see all the instances there. Now we can try something else. We can check whether the string has got any letter characters. Okay, so this is done using the backslash and then small w. Okay, we can see that from the first character we are verifying the condition, and we can see that all of them, they are characters. If you want to check something different, so let's add a special character there. So now we can see that the special character is not in our matches. Okay. Okay, also, if we change the small w to a capital W, then that's different. So now we're looking for all the characters other than words, other than letters. Okay, so let's check that. And the only match now is the percentage. Okay. All right, so let's try something else now. I'm just going to duplicate that. So let's look for a space. So the syntax is \s, and if we try that now, the result is false because we don't have any space in our string. But if we add a space there, or 2 spaces, then we can see that now we can see that the first space is at position 7, and the result is true. All right. Okay. Now let's look for digits, okay, but this time we're looking for 4 digits. So basically the syntax is the original syntax of looking for digits, followed by curly brackets, and inside the curly brackets we put the number of instances that we are looking for. Okay, so let's see what the result is going to be. So it is true because we have 4 digits there. Okay, and this is the results. Okay, now let's look for 10 digits, and it doesn't work. Well, basically the test returns false because we don't have 10 digits in our string. Okay, all right, so let's try something else. We want to test whether the string has got capital A as the first character. Okay, and we would need to use a caret for that, so it's a / at the beginning. All right, okay, now it's true. So if we change capital A to capital or to B or any other letter, it doesn't work. Okay. And finally, we can also check whether we have a line break character inside our string using \n. Let's check that. Okay, it's returning false, but if we change this, just have a line break there, line break character. Now it is working. All right. Okay, so this has shown us how regex works. It's quite powerful to validate user inputs, and we'll see some examples later on. They will be used mainly to validate emails or other inputs like telephone numbers and so on.